Hello, friends.
Just to be clear, she's a Luciferian. So when she's talking about her God, she ain't talking about our God. Okay. That doesn't mean this isn't going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to hear how she phrases everything. Again, I'm not 100% sure she's a true believer or if this isn't done for profit or for shock value. I don't know. I don't have a way to gauge that. I still think that our personalities are different enough that I'm not sure we would have an amazing conversation. I would love to talk to her just because I'm a fan of hers and I admire her work. I think what she does is interesting, but I'm super Catholic and I'm very much a rationalist. I don't mean to be, but I am. I'm not big on the supernatural. I used to be when I was much younger. When I was a teenager, I was big on the supernatural, and through studying and trying to prove the supernatural, I basically proved the supernatural false. When I did the same thing with Catholicism, went the other way. I found that Catholicism was true. So I don't know. Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to have her on as a guest. I like her, so it doesn't matter. Even if she came on, it's not like I'm going to be mean to her. I'm just not sure if it would be entertaining to the audience, you know?
Today, we are here to discuss my own personal religious and spiritual journey. There are quite a few videos like that on the internet. So, I thought I'm going to make one too. So to begin with, one thing.
It's going to be different. This is going to be different for those watching at home. This is going to have a twist, and the twist is going to come early. And thank you for playing.
I was raised Christian, but I didn't feel connection to my faith. A lot of bad things have happened to me as a child. It included surgeries and being sickly and a divorce and a lot of those struggles.
I don't know why divorce ends up being such a big factor in all of these things. I wish it wasn't, because it just sounds like a cliche and it sounds like a weapon that can be used rhetorically by a Catholic or a Christian against, someone who's not. Oh, your parents were divorced. You have. I think the minimizing of that tragedy is problematic in itself. But I also think the statistics don't help that it just keeps on being one of the factors. Your trust in humanity and authoritative figures breaks.
Structures that you would have.
I grew up without a mom. My mom died when I was 6, so I have a different perspective on all this stuff anyway.
And a normal childhood just wasn't my experience of childhood, and I received no peace from prayer. Certainly my prayers have not been answered, and that's why
all my prayers have been answered throughout my entire life. Every single one, actually. When I was a kid, I don't exactly remember praying in that way. When I learned about prayer, I was probably a later teenager, and I abused prayer, to be really blunt. I didn't know I was. I didn't know I was misusing it, but I would pray for things like parking spaces and better grades and all that kind of stuff. But when I became more mature and I learned what prayer was and that it was about being grateful to God and saying thanks and all that kind of stuff, my prayer life got healthier. Again, by the time that it got healthy, I was in my mid-30s, so it took a long time.
Wrote all of religion as entirely bollocks, but here we are, 50.
But again, I'm not joking around. Every single prayer I've ever said in my entire life has been answered.
15 years later, and the current timeline, well, now it's...
I'm not a perfect person. I sin all the time. I mess up all the time. I literally told you all I messed up on Saturday. People, when they say that their prayers weren't answered, in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe God just said no.
A lot more than 15 years later, but...
Or they weren't patient to wait for the answer.
At that point, it was 15 years later. I tried my best to make it in a career that was very much unsuited for me.
We've all done that.
Had resulted in me having thoughts, frankly, as I really, really struggled. I worked the job that I worked for one.
It's like everyone I watch is determined to make sure my channel doesn't get monetized. I'm now monetizable, and every single video I watch, even no matter how safe I'm being with the language, every video I'm interested, like, I don't know what's in the video till I click it. They're going to say the things that get demonetized.
1.5 years. And 9 months of that was spent in overtime, like significant overtime. My boss could reach me whenever they wanted to. I was trying to live up to an expectation of what I was supposed to be. My mother was a career woman. My grandmother also worked, had, a normal, good job. It's regular for women in my family to work, so I tried to live up to that standard. I hate how that light is hitting a shadow on me right now, so I'm trying to adjust my position in order to make the shadow go away, as well as, make this video feel kind of intimate and personal, because in the end it is personal. That's why there's only me on screen, there was this expectation of me that I was supposed to be a career woman. All women in my family line were career women. They made things happen. They made do. There wasn't such a thing as a housewife necessarily. Even my grandmother's mother did all that she could up to a point where it took her life because she was also a frail health person. But it's just, I've come from Eastern Europe. I come from where Soviet Union was. There wasn't really such a thing as the pleasure to have a person that stays at home. Everybody worked. Women worked just like men worked. Therefore, I was also expected to work. So I was university educated. I got into a career and I couldn't do it. I knew my whole life that office setting was entirely unsuitable for me, and I tried because it was an expectation that I should have been living up to. So here I am realizing that I can't live up to this expectation. I have a degree, but I can't really use it. I worked for 1.5 years. I've quit my job. I had a slew of health issues at that point, mainly to do with the fact that I have genetic health issues and spending.
Some of these stories, and mind you, again, this is going to take a twist to a different direction. But some of these stories, when they tell them, so there's a male version of the testimonial there's a point of weakness, and then the strength comes back, that kind of thing. And they realize their strength in their weakness, and manly Christian and all that kind of thing, or manly Jew, or manly Hindu, whatever, manly Muslim. But in the female telling of these stories, because I've listened to a lot of these testimonials, not when it comes to demonology, but when it comes to, the traditional major faiths. And from Buddhism to Christianity, the women always talk about health issues and family issues. And the men always talk about a personal crisis or a tragedy or some kind of crime that happened either to them or that they witnessed. And the subversion of expectations when they go from being a bad person to being a good person. That's the male story. For the female story, it's from being a victim of circumstance to having, power is probably the wrong word, because I don't want to disrespect who they were before. It's not like who they were before didn't have that power, but it's the self-realization of the power they contain within, that kind of thing. It's
9 months in overtime, significant overtime, and constantly being stressed, nervous, and on edge definitely did not help it, which does tend to cause a huge flare-up.
When I quit my job, before I quit my job, actually, and after I quit my job, I went to a priest and I went to a psychologist. The one that does the actual thing, not the one that does the medication. And I did assessments just to make sure that I was thinking properly. And everyone was like, yeah, green flags all the way. You're thinking properly. And the priest, when I told him, hey, look, I'm going to quit this job, he's like, I think it's the best thing for you. I think leaving that job is the best thing for you. And I'm like, are you sure? Because that's a lot of money. And he's like, it isn't about the money, man. And I'm like, yeah, well, what about my wife? My wife doesn't want this situation I'm about to jump into. And he's like, you guys can figure that out. Put that on the back burner. Don't worry about your father. Worry about your soul. Worry about all this other stuff. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, it's funny.
One thing with genetic and constant health issues is that
what if get divorced, and because we weren't married in the church, I'm not officially married, and I end up marrying I don't know, an ex-Wiccan or an ex-witch or demoness or whatever the heck, and then I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, my wife was atheist, but she was like the most Christian conservative atheist you've ever met. And then I end up, you know what I mean? It's just circumstance. I'm just because I know who I'm attracted to. I know who I date. I know what my hobbies are. My hobbies are, Vampire the Masquerade, Dragon Age, Dungeons and Dragons, X-Men, Batman, that kind of stuff. I'm 44. I'm still listening to the most trippiest, heaviest metal and digital futuristic cyberpunk music. You know what I mean? So I think the wife who I married is my best option. Not just because I love her, but because she's a decent human being. You know what I mean? And she doesn't have any of the baggage you get from the West, any of the Western baggage. So I don't know. I don't know what happens if me and my wife don't work out and the marriage is never recognized by the church, which then means I can get married, to someone else because I've never been married as far as the church is concerned. Yeah, and then I marry someone who shares my hobbies and my interests. I'm not sure that that's something the church would want. It's weird to think about, and I probably shouldn't be having this conversation on YouTube anyway, but I am. So all of you who are listening to this is a conversation I'd be having with my best friend who I was talking to earlier today.
What you lose, you don't tend to get back. it gets better, but your health is permanently impacted. Just consider yourself as having less health than everyone else and adjust.
I don't like that way of thinking. The cancer scare took a lot out of me, but my body eventually healed from the radiated pill and all that kind of stuff. The diabetes, I've never been 100% since. The muscle atrophy, the diabetic muscle loss, I can never get that muscle back. It died. I can compensate by having more muscle, and I've eventually got better at running and all of that. And then I lost that when I had a 13-hour-a-day job, And I know my boss likes to say, "Oh, you guys don't have." No, we're there. We're always there, and we're always on call. So I'm able to get healthier now that I'm working this job that takes less personal time. But like, I broke my foot recently, and this is week number 4 already. So I'm going into week 5. I'm not able to run, so I gained a little bit of the weight back. And then right now I just drank a lot of liquid, so I don't look great right now. But I lost all the weight, and now it's slowly coming back. So, but it doesn't matter how much shape I get in. I'm always going to be a little weaker. I'm always going to be getting a little tired. I'm always going to be, and it's not just age. It's the diabetes itself. It messes with my hormones. It messes with my ability to maintain energy. I can't eat extra carbs because then my body can't burn them. So I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm just saying I think part of it is the way your outlook on life. You know what I mean? Like I look at things more positively. Yeah, I can seem like a negative son of a gun, but at the end of the day, I'm fairly positive about everything. Like you'll see me smiling more than you'll see me frowning, which wasn't always true in my life. There was a time where all I did was like I was quiet and I was like, no, I just do this. I don't know.
From there on, don't push yourself. And I am one of the people that I always try pushing because I try to see myself as.
Well, what if you did like a routine, like what I do, like where you work out, you train, you have to time when you train because once you run out of energy, you're out of energy. There's nothing you can do. You can't recover. Your recovery takes longer. But time your workouts like at nighttime or on your days off, and like your art and your writing, just time everything into a way that benefits your energy and where you get to expel your energy when you don't need it, not before you're going to need it, which I've made that mistake a few times. And then I'm just exhausted at work. Like my legs are crampy.
Being entirely healthy when that is not the point. But once again, that is how I was raised. I was raised that I can do everything the same as all the other people can do and that I should go out and get a university degree. I should have a regular job. I should stop whining. I shouldn't bring up my health issues. I should keep it to myself and I should work through them. When
my mom died when I was 6, my dad came back into my life when I was 15, and I didn't accept him back into my life until I was like 26, 25, 26 is when I accepted him back in. And then at like 32, 33, I realized that he was bad for my life and I distanced myself from him and I kind of kicked him out of my life. And then, I don't know, just a few years later, he has Alzheimer's. And once that happens, there goes everything. Like just suddenly he's in my life all the time. There's no getting away from him now. So, yeah.
That wasn't working in my life. My whole life was kind of just flying through my eyes and I needed something. I needed a reason not to be. Frankly, I needed something that worked, and investigating spirituality was one of the directions.
For me, it was different. So my mom died when I was 6. By the time I was 8 years old, 8 years old is going to be a big factor in what I'm about to say. By the time that I was 8, my sister had died. My favorite aunt had died. 2 people in my life had committed, I don't want to say the word, even though she's already said it twice, but had committed self-deletion. So I had dealt with all of that by the time I was 8. Then at 8 years old, we moved from a very poor neighborhood to an up-and-coming neighborhood. My dad's a teacher. We weren't rich, but he's also very smart. So he had investments and stuff like that. With the money that I got from my mom from the Social Security check, he turned it into investments. And he also had the builder buy all the supplies in Mexico. So all of the stuff in the house is non-standard, which means it's hell whenever anything breaks. Because if I want to go to Lowe's and buy something, nothing fits because he bought everything across the border. And then, yeah. Anyway, he cut corners. He found a way to get us a very nice 5-bedroom house, a very large kitchen, definitely larger than most people's down here's apartments. And then we have a huge living room. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I lived in a house that was the size of my living room for the first 8 years of my life. Like the size of my living room now is the size of my original home. And I was only able to get that home because my mother died and my dad was clever enough to turn that very tiny bit of money into investments. And he turned that into a very nice house. So there's I forgot where I was going with what she was saying because I got distracted with my own history. Whatever. I'm a bit of a narcissist. I think anyone on YouTube is.
That I decided to take, and honestly, I threw all the shit at the wall and saw what sticks. I decided to completely ignore what's rational, what would be considered woo-woo, what would not be considered woo-woo. My husband is an atheist, so that was a worry of mine. Thankfully,
I don't know when I first saw her or watched one of her videos. All I know is that I've been watching her stuff for a very long time.
Very accepting man. We're still together. That did not change. It's my spirituality is seen as a hobby, and it is acceptable for me to have. I don't push it upon him, of course, but about that because I was.
For some reason, her relationship reminds me of the meme of the spooky girlfriend, where it's like a normal looking hero dude, and then like the spooky goth chick doing like a ritual.
Worried that appearing logical was gonna have an impact, but I was at a point where I was just prepared to throw absolutely everything at the wall, and I did. And before that point, before the breaking...
Oh, I was talking about my history of why... Okay, the ghost thing. There we go. In 1988, we moved to this really expensive neighborhood. And I was immediately ostracized as the poor kid. Like just immediately. I had a bit of a different accent. I didn't have this accent. I didn't sound white yet. Or Anglo yet. And I also came from a neighborhood where the sports were different. So it was bike riding, fence jumping, tree climbing, soccer. And then I come into this neighborhood where it was baseball, street hockey, football. So it was a complete turnaround and swimming because people here have swimming pools. And I just remembered feeling lost, I guess. And 2 movies came out that just changed my life. Beetlejuice and Ghostbusters. And I became obsessed with ghosts. I just did. And I wanted to find real ghosts. And when I found out, and I think I was watching, of all things, it was the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, and they were talking about real ghosts or whatever. Again, this is 1988. This is like not now. It's not current entertainment. And I think it was, what's his name? The guy who plays Ray, Dan Aykroyd, saying, oh, I went to the nonfiction section and I found stuff on ghosts. And I was like, the nonfiction section? You mean this isn't fantasy? And I immediately went to the nonfiction section at the library, where the librarian was the mother of a girl that liked me. So she let me skip classes and hide in there. And I just started reading everything I could about ghosts. I just went through all the nonfiction stuff. I became obsessed with ghosts and witches and magic. And first I read all the popular level stuff, and then I read all the deeper stuff, and then I read all the historical stuff. And then I started getting into the actual stuff, meaning like people trying to prove and disprove stuff. You found it real quickly. It's fake. You found once you get to, how the trick is done and all that kind of stuff, you find out really quick that it's not real, which is heartbreaking because you get all your hopes up. Anyway, let's continue on with her story.
Point when I just went to Amazon and decided to buy every single book on religion in the world, I had a dream that was actually quite significant, and it is just at the breaking point. It lived in my head from that point on, rent-free. It was very meaningful.
I think I had 2 or 3 big dreams at that same point. Again, mine was as a child, though. So I was able to deal with it through puberty and teenage angst. I was able to deal with all this stuff.
And effectively,
this was adulthood. So, different stage of life.
Dreamt of a whole bunch of Roman soldiers surrounding about one man that looked kind of similar to them, Roman in appearance, but he had angel wings and he was on an island alone while they were surrounding him in a circle as of some sort of coliseum. So, you can imagine the walls.
I used to dream that I would get eaten and killed by a dinosaur. I would die. Every single dream, I would die. Like I was dead. I was dead. And then I would just keep going after I'm dead. So the dream just kept on. Everything from decay to everything else. This is as a small child, 8 to 13. And at first they were nightmares. Like I wasn't able to control them. I didn't like G.I. Joe. I loved Transformers. I hated G.I. Joe. But there was an episode of G.I. Joe that spoke to me and that I was very grateful. And my mother made sure that I understood that Hollywood was fiction. So I didn't believe in Santa Claus. I didn't believe in any of that kind of stuff. So I knew that it was acting. I knew that there were writers. So I was aware of the writing. And I was very grateful to the writers for an episode where there's a guy who has nightmares every night. He has PTSD from war. And he has nightmares every night. And the Joes get hit by a sleeping spell that gives them permanent nightmares. I think it's the Baroness's plan or something like that. And the guy who always has nightmares plugs himself in. He's the only one who misses the spell. or the poison or whatever, the poison gas. So he infects himself, gets into the machine, and because he always has nightmares, he's able to handle the fears that the other Joes are facing. And he helps each Joe face their fear. And that episode was very powerful for me as a kid who had nightmares every single night. I don't think I had uncontrollable nightmares, except maybe once or twice after that happened. I'd still have the nightmare, but I would take control. I would do the exact same trick the character would do in this episode. I would take control of the dream. And I was like, okay, well, if this is a dream and this isn't real, then I'm in control. This is my own head. These are my own thoughts. And the final nightmare was the dinosaur ate me. I got killed. Well, first it killed everybody that I knew first. Then it came for me, and then it killed me. But this time I didn't wake up. I stayed asleep. I let myself die. And then I punched, clawed, I'm not really sure, out of the stomach of the dinosaur. And I killed the dinosaur. That's the last time I ever had a nightmare like that. Because once I was able to conquer it, I was good. Like I said, it reoccurred maybe once or twice more. But again, it was no longer as impactful once I had already conquered, I guess, the fear would be what I would say. And obviously, as an adult, I can look back at that dream and say, okay, I'm clearly trying to process death. A lot of people over 100 people died in my childhood that were close family members. So and close friends. So I was clearly trying to deal with the concept of death and me dying and all that. Because fine, clear. But it was representative in the dream by a dinosaur. I think a T-Rex, if I'm not mistaken, which thanks Disney. But yeah, Land Before Time and Fantasia. Thank you for that.
So there's a lot of very angry people looking, and there's this one man in the middle, and he had angel wings.
Also, Jaws was an influence there, I think, as well, too. Although it was never shark-like. It was always T-Rex-like.
And he was bleeding pretty badly. And below him...
I'm sure Jordan Peterson would say, it's a dragon, and you slayed your own dragon. Whatever.
I want to see a lake. All of his blood was running into the lake, and he looked as if he had won somehow in that situation. And when I tried to decode that dream, I posted online. It's quite interesting right now, looking back, because some people said allegory for Jesus. We're gonna get to that at the end of this video. But
she's not gonna do it to the end. Oh, she's gonna lull you in with the false sense of security.
That was an interesting dream to have. I'm gonna tell you how I interpret it a bit later. But yeah, that was just on the cusp of me starting religious searching. When I say I threw everything at the wall, I threw everything at the wall. Occult stuff included. Energy vampirism included. Everything at the wall. Everything went at the wall. Some things stuck. Some things didn't. Another quite religious experiences for me was...
When I was infatuated with ghosts, I was also infatuated with vampires and psychic vampires and werewolves and werecats and all this kind of stuff. This is long before it became popularized in YA fiction. This is long before erotica covered these same topics. This is in the late 80s, early 90s. I was obsessed with this kind of stuff. And I spent a lot of time researching this stuff as if it was real. And do I regret it? I could have been studying something for class. I could have been getting better grades. But, it was fun. And I mean, I know a lot of story tropes now. I can identify them on, you can show me less than a minute, maybe 2 minutes of a TV show. I can tell you exactly where it's going to end in the end season, the final season. I can tell you exactly what's going to happen at the end of the episode. So yeah, and in some ways it was worth it.
I was looking at Black Mirror divination. Black Mirror is effectively any dark surface. And normally there were more rules to setting it up, but you want a dark reflective surface. Some people do it with balls of water, just take a black ball, put water in it. It's going to make a dark reflective surface. We all have one, despite the fact that people consider them to be scary. When I say we all have one, I assume majority of the people are not technophobes and have a phone. Well, phones would count as, a black mirror surface. So in my trying everything, searching everywhere, one of the things that I did try that honestly I don't do quite as often right now, but it was a meaningful experience. I did Black Mirror divination. And the question that I asked was, what's going to be the most meaningful point for me in my life this year? And an image of a man came up. And I'm going to tell you, it scared me and I misinterpreted it. And I thought that I was going to get attacked by a thug on the street or something like that, just because the energy was so intense. And later on, I found the image of that exact man, which was a very validating religious experience that happened after my year passed, but I had the chance to interpret everything that was happening linearly a lot later. I have an image here because once again, I found it. Tell me you wouldn't get spooked if you saw that in the Black Mirror. Just ignore the Minotaur for now. Just take the man. It's a very intense image. The fact that I found somebody else that has drawn it and placed in a book when I did find was so validating and so incredible. Really, that year, my religious searching and kind of how I ended up intuitively on a direction that did suit me and that did lead me to where I am right now is one of the books that I tried and that I used, and I'm not gonna show you the cover just yet because it might scare some people. Let's leave that here. It included calling upon specific spirits in order to call on other spirits. The first spirit that you would call is God. Over time, I gravitated to the first spirit and I stopped calling the rest of the spirits, just naturally settling on that one until I was ready to nobody else.
There's some misleading going on here, but she's misleading on purpose, which I don't know anyone who would randomly come to her channel, wouldn't look at her other content and not realize where she's going. And I don't just mean because of how she's dressed or the accent or the tropes involved here or the theatrics, even though the theatrics are very minimized. If you're watching this for the first time and you don't know where she's going, I feel you're the problem, not her belief system, if that makes any sense. But she's saving it as a surprise, so I'll let it keep going the way that it is. I won't state outright. But just to warn you, this is not going. If you think she's going to come out of this a Christian, you're not paying attention to the cues she's given.
Asked me to, but I was ready to pledge myself and to take this on as a faith and as a religion, and as such, I started my daily worship effectively. If you're hearing this story and you think that something is a bit off, okay, cat's out of the bag. I use the word God for more than one spirit. A polytheist at heart, I believe in all of gods, and my god is Phosphorus, or as he's more widely known, mostly by Romans, Lucifer. There you go. And that's how I arrived.
I was actually wondering if she was going to stretch it, because I thought she was going to do it here, do the reveal here, just to be up front. I wasn't expecting it here. I was expecting it here, and then once she got to the midpoint, and she still hadn't done the reveal. But okay, 13 minutes in.
That my religion. Now, let's go back to all the signs that I was getting before. That whole dream. Rome is a very strong visual about my own spiritual direction, considering that I ended up with a Roman god. Illustrations of Lucifer, honestly, quite often have him as like a little cherub with wings as a son of Aurora, because, well, bright morning star, Venus, the first thing before morning, something that brings hope and light. Therefore, the wing symbolism also makes a lot of sense. And the blood and the lake was kind of like a dam opening up. The surrounding area is like other people's opinions, personal viewpoints. I am in the way of a lake, and my own personal connection to spirituality is direct. Therefore,
But I'll ask the same thing. Atheists would ask me about religion. About Christianity? How do you distinguish your internal perception from insanity? From just going nuts, losing it one day, and suddenly your delusions become tangible to you. Maybe to you alone, but tangible anyway. Tangible enough for you to believe they're real. How do you distinguish that? How do you maintain your logic once you've thrown logic out the door? Once you say, okay, there is an exception, and here it is.
Negativity can't impact what is happening with the spiritual connection, would be my personal interpretation of said dream. It was a very meaningful dream to have at a very, very meaningful time. Like
I said, mine was very different. And like I said, the subsequent nightmares that came afterwards, I was able to take control and be the lead character, if you will, the protagonist in most of those dreams. Not all, but most. So I'm not sure if maybe a kind of dream analysis psychotherapy might have been more helpful for her than whatever she was trying before she got into her religious mindset. Now that she's in her religious mindset, I don't even know if that type of therapy, dream analysis would even be proper anymore. But besides the point.
think I needed it, and it lived in my head rent free
And that
ever
doesn't mean
since.
she didn't try it. I don't know. I don't know if she tried it or didn't try dream therapy. In a way, all of this is holistic alternative medicine, just in a spiritual sense, spiritual healing or spiritual corruption, whatever you want to call it. For some people who are watching this, this might be spooky for them. This is not spooky for me. This is not something interesting or new for me. I dated many witches. That's the only way I could say it. And many is an exaggeration, but I dated a few very prominent witches in my life. And I'm not being metaphorical here. I'm not saying like, oh, they were a mean person. No, I mean, I dated a Brujandeja's daughter. I've dated a Wiccan. I've dated a polytheist mystic. I don't even know what to call Anissa. But yeah, I've dated many people in my life that are sex positive and either paganistic or polytheistic, that take it seriously, that don't take it as a joke. And I read a lot of their books. I read a lot of my books. I read a lot of books to understand what they were doing. But like I said, for the most part, 99% of it ended up being bullshit. And of the 99%, I would say 75% of it ended up being made up, just made up stuff that had no basis in reality. The stuff that was real had parallels with either other religions or parallels with science and chemistry. Again, these people who take it seriously would call it stealing back. So they're stealing back the science, they're stealing back the technology. So aspirin comes from herbal medicine, which comes from witches. And you have to understand that even in the ancient religions, witchcraft was actually seen as bad. Demons were considered bad. They weren't considered good, even in the ancient religions that we would now consider pagan. Just understand that in the ancient context, those are the good religions. The bad religions are the false religions. So false religions has always been bad. So if you follow the path and you're a fellow journeyman, I guess would be to say, a fellow traveler, it's not like Agatha all along. Let's just put it that way. It's really not. It's something a little bit more like WandaVision. It's something a little bit more like, even though it was terrible, is that multiverse movie with Doctor Strange, the one that Wanda was evil. It's a little bit more like that, even though I hate the way they did it there. Maybe the first half of the craft is, maybe the first 75% of the craft is maybe more like it. But there's no obvious magic. There's no like physical. You don't like cast a spell and people actually get healed because magic is fake. But the belief is real. So you have to ask, well, what's happening? If you cast a spell that doesn't work, why would you keep casting it? If you predict the future and it's only right 20% of the time, how does that 1 or 2 times that it's correct out of 10, how does that justify your belief in a thing? Like I said, I have a different experience. Praying, every single time I've prayed, my prayer has been answered. Every single time. So I have a very different experience than Mirta. I have a very different experience than most atheists that I talk to.
And it's funny because if you're gonna take like this image, I've seen the Minotaur in like one of my meditative visions as well, but that happened later. That happened already when I was practicing, but I effectively ended up intuitively finding my direction and then placing all of those other pieces together far, far later. I think I found exactly what I was searching for. I found being associated with knowing yourself with hope in some...
You usually find what you're looking for.
Cultures, Venus in the morning is also a symbol of healing, emotional healing, physical healing. It is a very peaceful influence.
You know, I want to do Jonathan Pugwow's video on Peter and the Upside Down Cross. I'm really interested to see what symbolism he draws out from that, because he doesn't usually stay on the shallow end. So I'm hoping it's going to be a good video. I don't know that it is. He's not always right on everything, but he's an interesting thinker to listen to.
That has slowly brought optimism into my life. I feel like I am a lot less jaded, a lot less nervous, a lot less bouncy, and a lot more of a social person. That was another thing, because through all of this work, what effectively ended up...
But we're becoming social, and I'm saying we here, we're becoming social after being miscreants, after being antisocial. As adults, it's a different thing. I mean, the weirdos we are now, if we go back in time when we were being rejected by society, we would still be rejected then for the weirdos we are now back then. So I don't think it's just your personal development. I think it's that society has changed. Society has become less religious. Those people who are still interested in spiritualism think of it as a joke and aren't scared of demons and ghosts and goblins like there used to be. You know, people play games openly. They play D&D now. It's one of the most popular. It was one of the most popular games of all time on Steam. So like the zeitgeist has changed. The perception of religion as a positive is now turned into a negative. People view, because of the views on homosexuality and the views on other issues, abortion, they view religion as the evil. So what religion calls evil, your religion meaning Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, the traditional major religions, calls evil is now being called good. It's like almost a fulfillment of almost every prophecy in almost every religion about what happens at the end times, which is why people are acting so nuts right now. So, and I get that we can say this about the 1920s. I get that we can say this about the mysticism of the Enlightenment and all of that. I get it. The penny dreadful exists for a reason. I get it. But just because the more things change, the more things stay the same, doesn't mean things haven't changed. People used to get beat up for being weirdos like you and I. People used to get burnt at the stake for being weirdos like you and I. I'm happy that you're developing, but I don't think your development can happen if society itself hasn't changed. And because society has changed, I think that lets you be more social.
Happening naturally is that I became braver. I started
because we have the internet.
Seeking out other people, religion unrelated, by the way, just for participating in the hobbies that I wanted to participate, for taking walks outside, taking nature pictures. I used to really like walking evenings. Now I walk mornings. I greet the sun. I greet the coming day. I talk with the old people taking their dogs for a walk. I exchange information about birds with neighbors. I participate in tabletop games. It wasn't me. I was a very shy and closed off individual. That was something that was very, very hard for me. And I am very easy to stress. I still run out of social spoons quite soon. So part of this is also me knowing myself, knowing where my limits are, what kind of people I can freely hang out with, what kind of people there are that are drama-free, where we can just share a hobby or a particular thing that we like to do together in a group that will work fairly well. There have been more dark times since then because, well, life is not easy. I don't know for whom life is easy, but my God became this pillar of security for me to, support myself on, which has really helped.
And that hasn't happened for me, just to be very clear. The opposite has happened. The further I've gone into religion, the less financially stable I've become. People don't want to hear what I have to say. People don't like being corrected. People don't like hearing truth. They want to believe what they believe, and they don't want to have facts get in the way of that, which is too bad. Because I'm not going to stop being Catholic, and I'm not going to stop worshiping God just because people don't like that I believe in science and evolution. So, sarah.
Helped in having a different outlook and despairing a lot less. I find that is what spirituality is best at providing, that moral support, that strength, that feeling that everything is going to be okay, that hope is not.
And again, for me, it is very different. I don't believe everything's going to be okay. I don't believe everything's going to magically work out. I believe it can work out. I hope it works out. But tragedies happen. People's lives end. It's possible I could be in the middle of an errand and get hit by a car or get into a car accident. My diabetes could take a turn to the worst and everything's done. So I don't have the same outlook as she does. But I think that's okay. I think it's okay to acknowledge that I'm a sinner, that I mess up, that I want to be better, that I'm in a situation that it's a bit out of my control, but I still want to be a published writer. I still want to go back to school and finish my degree. It doesn't matter if I'm 44. I still want to do YouTube, even if my audience is right now 2 people. So I don't know what I could say that would help her. I don't know what I could say that would even get her to look in my direction. I don't think there is anything that I could say. But like I said, I've been a fan of hers for years. If she ever wanted to talk to me on this channel, she's more than welcome. But that's not why I'm doing this video. I'm just interested in what she has to say, and I thought you guys might be interested in listening to it too. This is my first time listening to her say this. I knew she was going to do the twist. I knew the turn that was coming. I knew the twist that was coming, but I wanted to watch it anyway.
Not lost. The ability to weather the dark times, and it's kind of a thing that's common among a lot of spiritualities, and I really do wish that people were less, pitted against one another based on what they believe, because spiritualities just share quite a lot of similar traits, and there's quite a lot of similar solace that you can find
two of my favorite musicians of all time, both Canadian, Alanis Morissette and Biff Naked, agree with her statement here, but I don't.
It's best that you find it in a place that you relate to instead of trying to, be a square that gets shoved through a round hole. That's not very healthy for you. As such, I would really love to hear other people's stories. I don't really care who your god is. I don't care if you found Zeus or Apollo. I just enjoy hearing the genuine stories coming from genuine people. I enjoy hearing the word that comes from somebody's heart. That's kind of what this video is seeking to be. So hopefully I didn't shock or offend anyone. I mean, a lot of people know me on this channel. You are on my channel after all. You know what kind of person I am. So yeah, I hope this was just an enlightening video that kind of sums up my personal journey. If you want to ask any questions about my personal journey,
I'm going to link her name to this video. I know that she'll spot it. I know that she'll probably watch it.
Go ahead and ask. I know that I kept it vague and that I kind of just skirted over some details, but that's just how it is. A lot of these things are very, very personal. Therefore, they are hard to put into words. And some of the things you don't put into words, the same as you wouldn't really, open the door to your bedroom to strangers. The personal things are personal. But I can share an outline. I can share an outline of my journey and where I came from and how I got here. Hopefully that helps someone, either with encouraging them to share their own journeys, because that is always lovely to hear, or in promoting spiritual togetherness rather than divisions, how I'm going to phrase it.
I'm going to be blunt. You might one day get the Protestants and the Catholics and the Orthodox and the Chalcedonians and maybe even the Russian Orthodox all in the same room together singing Kumbaya. You're not going to get the pagans, the Luciferians, and the demonologists in that room. You're just not. That's not happening. We'll invite the Wiccans in, but we're going to tell them to quit being Wiccan. We can invite the witches in, but we're going to tell them to quit being witches. We tell them there's only one true God. Everything else is either imaginary, fake, or a demon. And demon ain't good here in this context. So while I appreciate what you're saying, I don't think it's a realistic ask. I think you and I could get along amazingly. Not as in it's amazing that we could get along, but as in we could get along very well, probably boringly well. But that's because I'm open-minded and I have a very long history that includes a lot of things like Wiccanism and magic and ghosts and vampires and werewolves and a whole bunch of other crazy things. So I don't, outside of a business deal, like where you're buying a car or a house or something, I don't see someone with your proclivities and interest vibing in a positive way with a born-again Christian or an evangelicalist, because the moment they find out what your belief system is, either they're going to judge you or they're going to try to convert you. And I'm pretty sure that's not what you're into. Although, who knows? I like Evie Lupine. Everybody has a different weird fetish or kink. So maybe you don't mind, or maybe you enjoy it when someone tries to convert you. I don't. That's not something that's why I don't do it. I don't do it on my channel. I don't do the conversion thing. If I lead someone to Christ, if I lead someone to religion, it's by example. It's not by beating them over the head with a theological stick. I don't need rhetoric to get someone to believe in God. I can just live my life and tell them what God has done for me and say, hey, if you want to try, prayer's right this way. It's not hard. God's already forgiven you. God already loves you. Just accept and start doing what he asks you to do. That's not a heavy pitch. That's a very soft pitch. Believe me, I wish car sales were that easy, or any other sales that I've done in my life. Insurance sales. So oddly enough, I think you're more Pollyannish on this than I am, which is fine. But I think that also makes you a little bit unrealistic, which again is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with hope. I'm big on hope.
I kind of hate that on social media, you can just get into this little circle and then never see content outside of it. When people have...
That's why I do what I'm doing. I'm literally presenting counterfactuals and information people don't want to hear to the exact people who need to hear it. And they don't like it. They don't even like it even a little bit. I'm going to keep doing it. I ain't stopping. As long as I have internet and I live in America, I ain't stopping. Freedom of speech, baby. That baby wasn't directed toward you. That's directed toward the audience.
In religion or culture that they grew in, it is also very unlikely for them to see people outside of it. Therefore, there is a lot less sharing going on, and I wish that there was more. Therefore,
This is my life. Okay, so someone walked in to a place that I was. They're wearing a goth costume, let's call it. Halloween's coming up. I wasn't put off by it. I was like, hey, let me talk to you. Let me say hi. Not everybody's me. Most people are scared of the strange and unusual. I'm intrigued. I want to know.
If you have found a god of any kind, why not make a video like this one? Have some fun. Even like link it to me. I don't know if...
I kind of feel like the problem with that request is she's just going to get a bunch of Christians trying to convert her. Who knows?
YouTube will accept links very well, but...
Yeah, YouTube doesn't do that anymore, which is too bad. I missed that day. I missed those days. And it made my channel so much more popular.
Try to get it to me somehow. At the very least, there is my email address inside, my channel page that you can see.
Speaking of which, I need to apologize. A lot of people have been saying they've been trying to reach me through my email. The email link that's on my channel is dead. Not because it's supposed to be. That's a working email. For some reason, it keeps on getting delinked or deactivated. I don't know why. So I'm going to change the email to one of my professional emails. Now that I'm no longer working in a professional business, I'm going to sacrifice one of those. I don't know which one. That way people can reach me. I haven't decided which one yet, though. It's either going to be the Gmail or the Yahoo. I haven't decided which one. But the alphacenturian email, for some reason, keeps getting deactivated. I could give you guys the iCloud email. I don't know. I have to figure it out. I'll figure it out. I haven't decided yet because I got other stuff going on. I got other big stuff going on. So the email hasn't really been a priority for me right now.
So if you ever make a video like this, just link it to me. I'm gonna take a watch. So thank you for watching this. I am very sorry for any weird pauses or anything like that. This video is entirely unscripted.
You did great. And your presentation style, well, a little bit slower than other people's presentation style, was about the same speed as mine. So I think this was great. I think this was fine. This is fine. This is good. You did good. You did fine.
I am Lithuanian by birth. Therefore, sometimes it is very hard to find the right words.
I don't know what's going on with Lithuania. I don't think she lives in Lithuania right now, just to be clear. But I've been through the internet. I've been having good interactions with people who identify as Lithuanian. I've had I'm going to say six really good interactions in the last month and a half. I don't know. I don't know what that's about, but I think that's kind of cool.
Especially when I'm trying to figure out how to phrase things on the go. Therefore, you get a bit of and some pauses, which then I don't edit because the video is just supposed to be genuine. It's something that's mine. It's something that's coming from my heart.
That's because you're coming from the old YouTube. People don't do this anymore. This is part of the reason why I'm still subscribed to your channel. And no negative way. I'm not exactly interested in demonology. Maybe I would have been 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm pretty set in my faith. But the fact that you're still earnest and honest and still doing these kind of talky videos, the old YouTube, the YouTube that I love, is part of why I'm still subscribed to you. Because at least you're still doing the thing. At least you're still doing YouTube. You're not trying to be an actor or whatever else people are trying to do, make an energy drink. At least you're not doing that. So thank you.
And I can't really convey it as well if I then go and script it. So hopefully this wasn't too awful on a watch. Thank you for watching. If you want to share this anywhere for any reason, go ahead. I don't mind. If you want to comment over this, I'm not going to press copyright. Go ahead. I don't mind. Thank you for watching. And I hope I'm going to see you in my other videos. I mostly do occult videos and gameplay videos.
Her gameplay videos are great, by the way. I mostly watch her nowadays for the Vampire the Masquerade stuff and for both the video game and the board game stuff. It's great. It's good entertainment.
Video games. And with occult videos, you can take a look at the rest of what I have. I tend to try and be down to earth in my approach to the occult. Maybe you'll like it,